My father leaned across the dinner table, eyes cold, and said, "Blood means nothing," the night he walked out on us. 10 years later, I found his other abandoned family struggling to survive. Now, as I sign the final adoption papers for his 3 forgotten children, I wonder if he ever thinks about the family he left behind that became stronger without him. Funny how the man who taught me blood means nothing gave me the siblings I'd always wanted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The silence after my father left was deafening. That's the thing about abandonment. It's not just the absence of a person, but the hollow echo they leave behind. Every empty chair at dinner, every missed baseball game, every Father's Day card never sent. I was 13 when Richard Blake walked out our front door for the last time, suitcase in hand, not even looking back at the life he was discarding. "Blood means nothing, Olivia," he'd said the night before, voice flat as we sat at our kitchen table. "It's just cells and plasma, don't romanticize it." Those words burned into my memory like a brand. Mom had been upstairs putting my brother Liam to bed, unaware that Dad was delivering his twisted philosophy lecture to me. I remember how the morning light filtered through our suburban Chicago home the day after he left. Dust particles dancing in sunbeams, everything looking exactly the same yet fundamentally altered. Mom stood at the kitchen counter, knuckles white against the ceramic mug she gripped, her wedding ring already removed. "He's gone," was all she said. No tears, just resignation. Liam, only 6 then, kept asking when Dad would be home for days afterward. We didn't hear from Richard for months. No calls, no child support checks, nothing. It was like he'd evaporated from existence, leaving only bank account withdrawals and credit card debt in his wake. Mom took extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. I started babysitting neighborhood kids after school. We survived, but the betrayal lingered like a persistent stain. 7 years passed. I finished high school, worked 2 jobs to put myself through community college, and eventually earned a scholarship to Northwestern University for social work. That's where I was when the letter arrived. My hands trembled as I read the formal notice from the Franklin County Family Court. Richard Blake was being sued for child support by a woman named Teresa Garza. 3 children, Emma, 8, Lucas, 6, and Sophia, 4. The court was seeking information about his whereabouts and assets. They'd tracked down Mom as his former spouse. I sat on the edge of my dorm bed, stunned. The bastard had started another family while still married to Mom, then abandoned them too. "Did you know?" I asked Mom over the phone that night, my voice barely steady. "No," she said after a long pause, "but I'm not surprised." She forwarded me the court documents which contained Teresa's contact information. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing those children's ages in my mind. 8, 6, 4. They were babies, and now they were living the same nightmare Liam and I had endured, but they were younger, more vulnerable. The next morning, I called the number listed for Teresa Garza. When she answered, her voice was wary, exhausted. "Ms. Garza, my name is Olivia Blake. I'm Richard Blake's daughter from his first marriage." The silence stretched between us before she finally spoke. "I'm sorry." "No, I'm sorry," I replied. "I just found out about your children. About what he did." "He told me he was divorced," she said quietly. "Then one day he just didn't come home. That was 2 years ago." My stomach nodded. The same pattern, the same callous abandonment. "I'd like to meet you," I said suddenly, surprising even myself. "And the children. If that's okay." There was hesitation on the line. "Why?" It was a fair question. Why would I want to involve myself in this mess? I had my own life, my own studies, my own healing to do. "Because they deserve better than what he gave them," I said finally, "and maybe we can help each other." The apartment complex where Teresa lived was in a struggling neighborhood on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. I drove there the following weekend, a 5-hour journey from Chicago that gave me plenty of time to question my decision. What was I hoping to accomplish? Was I just picking at old wounds? Teresa met me outside. She was petite, with dark curly hair pulled back in a ponytail, and tired eyes that seemed permanently shadowed. She worked as a medical assistant at a local clinic, she'd told me, but the hours had been cut back recently. "The kids are nervous," she warned as we walked up the exterior stairs to her second-floor apartment. "I told them you're their sister, but they don't really understand." The apartment was small but meticulously clean. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator. A stack of library books sat on the coffee table. 3 solemn faces turned to stare at me when I entered. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emma, the oldest, had Richard's deep-set eyes. Lucas had his cleft chin, and little Sophia, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, had his wavy brown hair. Looking at them was like seeing fragments of my own childhood reflected back at me. "Hi," I said, kneeling down to their level. "I'm Olivia." They studied me warily. Emma finally spoke, her voice small but direct. "Our dad is your dad too?" I nodded. "Yes. And I haven't seen him in a very long time, just like you." "Did he tell you blood means nothing too?" Lucas asked, and my heart nearly stopped. Teresa looked away, blinking rapidly. "He used to say that," she explained softly, when they asked about his family. The familiar rage bubbled up inside me. Same man, same callous words, different decade. Nothing had changed except the victims of his philosophy. I stayed for dinner that night, helping Teresa make spaghetti, while the kids showed me their toys and books. Emma was struggling with reading but loved science. Lucas couldn't stop talking about dinosaurs. Sophia was shy but eventually crawled into my lap to show me how her rabbit, Mr. Hops, could do somersaults. As I drove back to Chicago that night, I couldn't shake their faces from my mind. Teresa was doing her best, but she was drowning. Working reduced hours, fighting for child support that would likely never come, raising 3 children alone in a too small apartment with no family support. I called her the next day. "I'd like to visit again," I said. "Maybe take the kids to the zoo next weekend?" That visit turned into another, then another. I started driving to Columbus twice a month, sometimes bringing Liam, who is now 19, and working as an apprentice electrician. We'd take the kids to parks, museums, anywhere that offered free entertainment. I'd bring groceries, clothes from thrift stores, books I found on sale. Teresa was hesitant at first, proud and wary of charity. But as months passed, we formed a tentative friendship. She started calling me when Emma needed help with homework, or when Lucas had a meltdown about his missing father. "He asks why his dad doesn't love him," she confided one night after the kids were asleep, tears streaking her face. "What am I supposed to say to that?" I had no answers. Only shared pain and growing determination. The breaking point came when Teresa called me at 2 a.m., voice tight with panic. Sophia had a high fever, and she couldn't leave the other children alone to take her to the emergency room. I was in my car within minutes, driving through the night to reach them. By the time I arrived, Sophia's fever had broken, but the crisis had illuminated the precariousness of their situation. Teresa had no safety net, no one to call except me, a virtual stranger connected only by the man who had abandoned us all. 2 days later, I sat in my academic advisor's office at Northwestern, explaining why I needed to take a leave of absence from my master's program. "Family emergency," I said simply. When she asked for details, I surprised myself by saying, "I need to help my siblings." I found a small house to rent in Columbus, just a few blocks from Teresa's apartment. It had 3 bedrooms and a backyard, cramped for 5 people, but infinitely better than the apartment. I transferred my credits to Ohio State to finish my degree, found a job as a case manager at a local family services agency, and made the most important proposal of my life. "Move in with me," I told Teresa over coffee one morning. "All of you. No rent, just help with utilities when you can. The kids will have more space, you'll save money, and we'll both have support." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Why would you do this?" "We're not your responsibility." "They're my brother and sisters," I said, the words feeling right as they left my mouth. "And you're their mother. That's enough for me." "Blood means nothing," she quoted bitterly. "That's what Richard always said." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let's prove him wrong." It wasn't easy. The transition was chaotic. 5 people with different habits and expectations trying to create a shared home. There were arguments about chores, bedtimes, personal space. Teresa sometimes bristled at what she perceived as interference with her parenting. I sometimes overstepped boundaries in my eagerness to help. But there were beautiful moments too. The first time Emma came to me for help with her science project instead of retreating to her room in frustration. The night Lucas had a nightmare and climbed into my bed, trusting me to keep the monsters away. Sophia learning to write my name, proudly showing me the crooked letters. Olivia. 6 months into our arrangement, Teresa lost her job when the medical clinic where she worked closed suddenly. The timing couldn't have been worse. Emma needed glasses, Lucas had outgrown all his clothes, and the winter heating bills were astronomical. I picked up extra shifts at work, stretched my budget until it nearly snapped, and tried to hide my growing anxiety from the children. This experiment in chosen family was proving more challenging than I'd anticipated. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Ms. Blake?" The woman's voice was professional, detached. "This is Margaret Whitley from Franklin County Child Protective Services. We're calling regarding your father, Richard Blake." My throat went dry. "Yes?" "Mr. Blake was arrested last night in Cincinnati. DUI and possession charges. He had your contact information in his wallet." I gripped the phone tighter. "I haven't spoken to my father in over 10 years." "I understand," she said. "The reason for my call is that during processing, the system flagged him for outstanding child support and abandoned dependents. Given the circumstances, we're contacting next of kin regarding Emma, Lucas, and Sophia Garza." My heart raced. "They're safe. They live with me and their mother." There was a pause. "Our records show the children are living in a property leased solely in your name, with no legal guardianship established. Is that correct?" Ice flooded my veins as I realized how precarious our arrangement was. Without formal documentation, without legal standing, what would happen if Teresa decided to leave? What if Richard suddenly reappeared and demanded his parental rights? What if something happened to Teresa? "Yes," I admitted, "but we're family." "Blood relation doesn't automatically confer legal rights," Ms. Whitley said, unintentionally echoing my father's toxic mantra with bureaucratic precision. After the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table, mind racing. Teresa found me there an hour later when she returned from a job interview. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down her purse. I told her about the call, about Richard's arrest, about the questions regarding guardianship. "They could take the kids?" she asked, face pale. "No," I reassured her. "Not as long as you're here. You're their mother." But it made me realize how vulnerable our situation is. That night, after the children were asleep, Teresa and I talked for hours about the future, about security, about what family really means. By morning, we had a plan. The journey through family court was arduous. We spent months navigating paperwork, interviews, home studies, background checks. The system wasn't designed for our unusual situation, a half-sister and a mother seeking to establish legal co-guardianship of 3 children whose father had abandoned them. Some questioned my motives. Why would a 23-year-old woman with her whole life ahead of her want to legally bind herself to 3 children who weren't really hers? Others suggested I was naive, that I would regret the commitment when it interfered with dating, career advancement, my own eventual family. "Blood means nothing," my father had said, but here I was, proving that bonds can be chosen, can be built, can be stronger than DNA. Liam supported me completely, driving down from Chicago for court dates, testifying about our own abandonment, helping with house repairs on weekends. Mom was more cautious, worried I was sacrificing too much, but she sent care packages and called the children on their birthdays. The day we received preliminary approval for the co-guardianship, Emma, now 9, asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. "If you're our guardian with Mom, does that make you our mom too?" I knelt down to her level, searching for the right words. I'm not trying to replace your mom. Teresa is your mother. But I'll always be here for you no matter what. Some kids have a mom and a dad. Some have two moms or two dads. Some have grandparents or aunts or uncles who take care of them. You have your mom and you have me. She considered this, her small face serious. So you're like, our bonus mom? I laughed, unexpected tears pricking my eyes. Sure, bonus mom works. Does that mean we can have ice cream? Lucas piped up from across the room. Ever the opportunist. And so bonus mom became my official title. Not replacing Teresa, but complementing her, creating a family structure that worked for us, regardless of conventional labels. The final hearing for our co-guardianship arrangement was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in March. The courthouse was quiet, just a few other families waiting for their own proceedings. Emma, Lucas, and Sophia sat in a row of chairs, dressed in their best clothes, Sophia's hair carefully braided by Teresa. As we waited, a man walked through the double doors at the end of the hallway. I didn't recognize him at first. It had been a decade after all. But then he stopped, staring at our little group, and I knew. Richard. He looked older, grayer, his face mapped with lines I didn't remember. He wore a rumpled suit that hung loosely on his frame. Our eyes met across the polished floor, and for a moment, everything around us seemed to fade away. Dad? Lucas's voice broke the silence. He had never met Richard, but he recognized him from the single photograph Teresa had kept. Richard's gaze shifted to the children, then to Teresa, who had gone rigid beside me. His expression was unreadable. Shock, perhaps, or dismay at finding us all together. Before he could speak, a court officer called our names. Garza Blake guardianship hearing, courtroom 3. I stood, gathering our paperwork. Teresa took Sophia's hand. Emma and Lucas followed, eyes still fixed on the stranger who was their father. This is a private family matter, I told Richard, my voice steady. You're not welcome. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Olivia? No, I cut him off. You said blood means nothing. You were right. What matters is who stays, who shows up, who builds a home. That's not you. I turned away, ushering my family toward the courtroom door. I could feel Richard watching us, but I didn't look back. Whatever he had come to say, whatever excuse or explanation he might offer, it was too late. The judge reviewed our case with efficient compassion. She asked the children questions about their living arrangement, about school, about how they felt about the co-guardianship. Emma spoke eloquently about having two adults who cared for her. Lucas described our Sunday movie nights with elaborate detail. Sophia simply said, "I love my moms," which made the court reporter smile. When the judge signed the final order, granting Teresa and me legal co-guardianship of all 3 children, the relief was overwhelming. It wasn't adoption. Teresa retained her full parental rights, but it gave me legal standing to care for the children if anything happened to her, to make medical and educational decisions, to be recognized as their family in every way that mattered. As we left the courtroom, Richard was gone. Whether he had witnessed our hearing or fled before it began, I didn't know. Part of me hoped he had seen it. Seen the family that had formed in the void he created, stronger and more intentional than the ones he had carelessly discarded. That night, we celebrated with pizza and ice cream. The kids stayed up too late, high on sugar and the excitement of a day off school. After they finally went to bed, Teresa and I sat on the back porch, sharing a bottle of wine. "I never thought we'd end up here," she admitted, looking up at the stars. "When Richard left, I thought I'd be alone forever." "Me too," I said. "But we're not alone. We have them. We have each other." She clinked her glass against mine. "To proving him wrong." I smiled. "To family, the kind you choose." The court papers weighed nothing in my hands, but the responsibility they represented felt immense. Co-guardianship granted. Teresa and I now legally shared responsibility for Emma, Lucas, and Sophia. As we walked out of the courthouse that spring day, I felt a strange mixture of elation and terror. What had I done? At 23, I had legally bound myself to 3 children who would need me for years to come. No going back, no changing my mind. That night, after the pizza party and ice cream celebration, after tucking the kids into bed with extra stories and kisses, I sat alone in the backyard. The weight of it all finally hit me. Tears came suddenly, overwhelmingly. Not sad tears, not exactly, but the kind that come when emotions are too big for your body to contain. Olivia? Teresa's voice came from the back door. She was silhouetted against the kitchen light, a blanket in her hands. You okay? I wiped my face quickly. Yeah. Just processing. She came and sat beside me, draping the blanket over both our shoulders. We sat in silence for a moment, looking up at the stars peeking through the light pollution of suburban Columbus. Having second thoughts? She asked finally. I shook my head. No, but I'm scared I'll mess this up somehow. She laughed softly. Welcome to parenthood. I've been terrified since the day Emma was born. How do you handle it? She considered this. One day at a time. And remember that love covers a multitude of mistakes. The next morning was chaos, as usual. Emma couldn't find her science project. Lucas had a meltdown because his favorite dinosaur shirt was in the laundry. Sophia spilled orange juice on her dress minutes before we needed to leave for school. Normal family chaos, the kind I was still learning to navigate. I dropped the kids at school, then headed to the family services agency where I worked. My boss, Diane, had been remarkably understanding about my unusual family situation, even rearranging my schedule to accommodate court dates and school events. How'd it go yesterday? She asked when I settled at my desk. We got it, I said, unable to keep the smile from my face. The co-guardianship is official. She squeezed my shoulder. Congratulations, Mama. The title still felt strange. I wasn't their mother. That was Teresa. But I was something. Something important. Something permanent. My phone buzzed with a text from Liam. Proud of you, sis. Those kids hit the jackpot when Dad screwed up. That made me smile. Liam had been my rock through all of this, driving down from Chicago whenever he could, teaching Lucas how to ride a bike, helping me assemble furniture for the house. He'd become the kind of big brother I'd always wished he could be when we were growing up. Present, protective, involved. Mom had been slower to embrace our unconventional family. She worried I was taking on too much, sacrificing my youth, my independence. You've always been too responsible, she told me once. Always trying to fix what your father broke. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was all some elaborate attempt to heal my own childhood wounds. But watching Emma master a difficult math concept, or hearing Lucas giggle uncontrollably at silly jokes, or feeling Sophia's small hands slip into mine as we crossed the street, those moments didn't feel like sacrifice. They felt like gifts. As spring turned to summer, we settled into a new routine. Teresa found a job at a hospital closer to home, with better hours and benefits. I continued my work at the Family Services Agency, using my lunch breaks to check in with the kids, teachers, or schedule doctor appointments. Weekends were for park outings, and library visits, and home improvement projects. It wasn't perfect. The house was perpetually messy, money was always tight. Teresa and I sometimes clashed over parenting approaches. She was more traditional, I was more permissive. Emma began testing boundaries. Lucas developed night terrors. Sophia became clingy when either of us left the house. But we were making it work. Building our family one day at a time. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, a plain white envelope with my name handwritten on the front. No return address, but the postmark was Cincinnati. I knew who it was from before I even opened it. Richard's handwriting was just as I remembered, sharp, angular letters that pressed too hard into the paper. The note was brief. Olivia, I saw you at the courthouse. I need to talk to you. Please call. Dad? He'd included a phone number. I stared at it, my stomach churning with emotions I couldn't even name. Anger, certainly. Resentment. Curiosity. And underneath it all, that stubborn, childish hope that had never quite died. The hope that someday he'd explain, He'd apologize. He'd become the father I'd needed. I shoved the letter into a drawer and tried to forget about it, but it haunted me. During dinner, while helping with homework, lying awake at night, my mind kept returning to those few sentences, to the phone number I'd already memorized despite myself. 3 days later, I told Teresa about the letter. "Are you going to call him?" she asked, her expression carefully neutral. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to hear what he has to say. Part of me wants to tell him exactly what I think of him, and part of me just wants to ignore him completely." She was quiet for a moment. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you, but I don't want him anywhere near the kids unless we're both absolutely sure it's safe." I nodded, grateful for her steadiness. I'd never risk them. That night, after everyone was asleep, I took out the letter again. Then, before I could change my mind, I dialed the number. He answered on the second ring, voice rough with sleep or drink, I couldn't tell which. "Hello?" "It's Olivia," I said, my own voice surprisingly steady. A sharp intake of breath. Then, "Thank you for calling." "I'm not doing this for you," I clarified. "I'm doing it for myself. What do you want?" "I want to see you," he said. "To explain." I almost laughed. "Explain what? Why you abandoned 2 families? Why you told your children that blood means nothing? There's no explanation that could possibly justify what you did." "I know," he said quietly. "I know that, but I'd like to try." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between Columbus and Cincinnati. Neutral territory. Public. Safe. I told Teresa where I was going, promised to call her every hour, and drove south with my heart in my throat. Richard was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a mug between his hands. He looked older than he had at the courthouse, more worn down. The confident, impatient man from my childhood was gone, replaced by someone who seemed perpetually apologetic about the space he occupied. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and sat across from him, keeping my coat on like armor. "You look good," he said. "Grown up." "That's what happens in 10 years, I replied. He nodded, eyes dropping to his coffee. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot worse," I said. "But I didn't come here to punish you. I came to understand why. Why you left. Why you started another family while still married to Mom. Why you abandoned them too." He took a long breath. "The simple answer is that I'm a coward. When things got hard with your mom, I ran. When Teresa got pregnant unexpectedly, I panicked. When being a father became too difficult, I found excuses to be away more and more until I just didn't come back." "That's not an explanation," I said. "That's a confession." "Yes," he agreed, "it is." "And what about blood means nothing? Why teach that to children you were planning to abandon?" His face tightened with shame. "Because I needed to believe it. If blood meant nothing, then walking away wasn't so terrible. It was just people going separate ways, not a father failing his children." The raw honesty startled me. I'd expected excuses, justifications, maybe even blame. Not this quiet acceptance of his failures. "I've been sober for 6 months, he continued when I didn't speak. "Part of my recovery is making amends where possible. I know I can't undo what I did to you, to Liam, to Teresa, and the kids. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see the damage I caused." "Congratulations on your sobriety," I said, meaning it despite my anger. "But what exactly are you asking for here? Forgiveness? A relationship? Access to the children you abandoned?" He shook his head. "I'm not asking for anything, I just wanted you to know that I saw what you did. Taking in Teresa and the kids, becoming their guardian. It's more than I ever did. It's remarkable." I didn't know what to do with his praise. Part of me wanted to reject it outright. I hadn't done it for his approval. But another part, that stubborn inner child, soaked it up like rain in drought. "They're my family," I said simply. "That's what family does. Shows up, stays." "I know," he said. "I never learned that. My father left when I was 4. My mother cycled through boyfriends who didn't want another man's kid around. I grew up believing family was temporary, conditional. It wasn't an excuse, but it was a context I hadn't considered. Richard, too, had been abandoned as a child. He'd repeated the cycle, just as counselors at the Family Services Agency warned happened so often. "That's why what you're doing matters so much," he continued. "You're breaking the cycle. For Emma and Lucas and Sophia, family will mean something different because of you." We talked for nearly 2 hours about his childhood, his struggles with addiction, the shame that had driven him further away each time he failed, about my college years, my decision to pursue social work, the unexpected turn my life had taken. Not reconciliation, exactly, but a kind of understanding. As we prepared to leave, he handed me an envelope. "This doesn't make up for anything," he said, "but it might help." Inside was a cashier's check for $20,000. His entire savings, he explained. For the kids, education fund or house repairs or whatever they needed. I stared at it, emotions warring within me. It felt like blood money, a way for him to ease his conscience. But it was also opportunity. Breathing room in our perpetually tight budget, security for the children's future. "Thank you," I said finally. "I'll use it for them." "That's all I ask," he said. Then, hesitantly, would it be possible to see them someday? Not now, not until you and Teresa feel it's right. But someday? I didn't have an answer for him. That would be a decision Teresa and I would need to make together, with the children's best interests at heart. "I'll think about it," was all I could promise. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept replaying the conversation, searching for deception, for manipulation, for the Richard I remembered. But all I could see was a broken man trying, far too late, to acknowledge the damage he'd done. Teresa was waiting when I got home, the children already in bed. I told her everything, the conversation, the check, his request to someday see the kids. "Do you believe him?" she asked when I'd finished. "About being sober? About wanting to make amends?" "I think so," I said, "but I don't know if it matters. Some things can't be undone." She picked up the check, running her fingers over the numbers. "This could pay for Emma's braces, Lucas's therapy, so many things we've been putting off." "It feels wrong to take it," I admitted. "It feels wrong not to," she countered. "Not for him, for the kids. They deserve whatever advantages we can give them, no matter where they come from." She was right, of course. Whatever Richard's motivations, the money could do real good for the children he'd abandoned. We decided to deposit it in a separate account to be used only for their needs. Medical expenses, education costs, extracurricular activities they otherwise couldn't afford. As for his request to see them, that was more complicated. We agreed to revisit the question in 6 months. If he stayed sober, if he showed consistent interest without pushing boundaries, then maybe we could consider a supervised meeting. Maybe. Life went on. Summer arrived in full force, bringing with it the challenge of keeping 3 energetic children occupied during school break. We enrolled them in community center day camps, planned weekend trips to nearby lakes and parks, established a routine of library visits and backyard sprinkler sessions. Emma, now 10, was blossoming. Her reading had improved dramatically, and she developed a passion for astronomy. We bought her a beginner's telescope with some of Richard's money, and she spent hours in the backyard identifying constellations and planets. Lucas, at 7, remained our sensitive soul. He struggled with anxiety, especially in new situations, but therapy was helping. His therapist suggested art as an outlet, and soon our refrigerator was covered with his colorful, detailed drawings, mostly dinosaurs and robots, occasionally interspersed with family portraits that always included both Teresa and me. Sophia, the baby at 5, was fearless and affectionate. She started kindergarten that fall, marching into the classroom without a backward glance while Teresa and I tried not to cry at this milestone. She made friends easily, collected rocks and bugs, and still carried Mr. Hops the rabbit everywhere. I continued my work at the Family Services Agency, now with a deeper understanding of the families I helped. Teresa was promoted to lead medical assistant, bringing a welcome increase in salary and benefits. We weren't wealthy by any measure, but we were stable, a luxury neither of us had experienced in years. We heard from Richard occasionally, brief, respectful texts checking in. A birthday card for each child, with a small gift card enclosed, which we added to their savings accounts. Reports of continued sobriety, therapy sessions, community service hours. No pressure, no demands, just gentle persistence. One evening in late September, after the kids were in bed, Teresa brought up the question we'd been avoiding. "It's been 6 months," she said. "What do you think about Richard's request to meet the kids?" I sighed, setting down the book I'd been reading. "I'm torn. He seems genuinely changed. But I worry about confusing them, about opening up wounds." "They ask about him sometimes," she admitted. "Especially Lucas. He wants to know if his father looks like him, talks like him." "What do you tell him?" "The truth. That his father made bad choices, but that doesn't mean he's a bad person. That addiction is a disease that makes people hurt the ones they love. That he has us now, and we're not going anywhere." I nodded, throat tight with emotion. "You're a good mother." Quote. "So are you," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Different styles, same goal." We decided to consult the children's therapist before making any decisions about Richard. Dr. Morgan had been seeing all 3 kids since we'd established the co-guardianship, helping them process their feelings about their unconventional family structure and their father's absence. "Children are remarkably resilient," she told us during our consultation. "But they need honesty, consistency, and strong boundaries. If you do decide to allow contact with their father, it should be gradual, supervised, and with no promises of ongoing relationship until he's proven his reliability." With her guidance, we developed a plan. First, we would show the children recent photos of Richard and explain who he was, gauging their reactions. If they expressed interest in meeting him, we would arrange a brief, supervised visit in a neutral location. We would proceed only as quickly as the most hesitant child was comfortable with. Emma was suspicious when we brought up the topic. "Why does he want to see us now?" she demanded, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "Where was he when Sophia was sick? When Lucas needed help with his nightmares? When I had my science fair?" Lucas was quieter, studying the photo with intense concentration. "He has a chin like mine," he observed finally. Sophia, too young to remember Richard at all, seemed merely curious. "Does he like frogs?" she wanted to know. "I like frogs." We let them process the information at their own pace, answering questions honestly but simply. Yes, he had made bad choices. Yes, he had hurt people. Yes, he was trying to do better now. No, they did not have to see him if they didn't want to. After a week of conversations, questions, and one spectacular meltdown from Emma, they all agreed to a brief meeting. We chose a public park with a playground, casual, open, with plenty of distractions if things became uncomfortable. The morning of the meeting, I felt physically ill with anxiety. What if Richard didn't show up? What if he said something damaging? What if the kids were traumatized by the encounter? Teresa, usually the more cautious of us, was surprisingly calm. "We'll be right there," she reminded me. "We can end it any time. And remember, they're meeting a stranger, not reuniting with a father. The expectations are lower than you think." Richard arrived 15 minutes early, waiting nervously on a bench near the playground. He'd brought small gifts: astronomy flashcards for Emma, a dinosaur book for Lucas, a stuffed frog for Sophia. Thoughtful choices that showed he'd been paying attention to what we'd told him about their interests. The meeting itself was brief, awkward, but ultimately uneventful. The children were shy at first, hiding behind Teresa and me. Richard was careful not to push, speaking softly, asking simple questions about school and hobbies. Sophia warmed to him first, delighted with her new frog. Lucas showed him a robot drawing. Emma maintained a polite distance, answering questions directly but volunteering nothing. After 30 minutes, we thanked Richard and headed home. In the car, the kids were unusually quiet, processing the experience in their own ways. Finally, Lucas spoke up from the back seat. "He seems nice, but he's not like how I imagined." "How did you imagine him?" Teresa asked gently. Lucas considered this. "Bigger. Louder. More like a dad in a movie." He seems sad, Emma observed unexpectedly, like he knows he messed up. I think you're right, I told her, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. He did mess up, and he is sad about it. My frog's name is Splashy, Sophia announced, apparently done with the deeper conversation. That night, after tucking the kids in, I found Emma still awake, staring at her ceiling where we'd stuck glow-in-the-dark stars and constellations. You okay, sweetie? I asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. She was quiet for a long moment. Is he going to try to take us away from you? My heart squeezed painfully. No, absolutely not. Teresa is your legal mother, and I'm your legal guardian. We're your family, and nothing can change that. She nodded, then asked the question I could tell had been weighing on her. Do we have to call him Dad? No, I said firmly. You can call him Richard. You can call him Mr. Blake. You don't have to call him anything if you don't want to. Your feelings are what matter here. She seemed to relax at that. Good, because I already have a mom. And a bonus mom. I don't need a dad who doesn't know how to be one. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. You're pretty wise for a 10-year-old, you know that. She smiled sleepily. I get it from you. As I closed her door, I realized something important. The children weren't fragile victims in need of protection from reality. They were active participants in our family's story, with their own wisdom and resilience. They didn't need to be shielded from the truth about Richard. They needed tools to process it, framework to understand it, and the security of knowing that Teresa and I would be there no matter what. The next day, I called Richard to debrief about the meeting. Thank you, he said, for giving me that chance. They're incredible kids. Yes, they are, I agreed. And they're doing well. They have questions about you, naturally, but they're processing everything in their own ways. Will I be able to see them again? He asked, the hope in his voice unmistakable. Maybe, I said. But we need to be clear about something. If you want a relationship with them, it has to be consistent. No disappearing when it gets hard. No breaking promises. No, blood means nothing, talk ever again. They've had enough abandonment for a lifetime. I understand, he said. I'm committed to doing this right, however long it takes. I believed him, or at least I believed he meant it in that moment. Whether he had the strength to follow through remained to be seen. We'll be in touch, I promised. One step at a time. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not because everything was resolved, far from it, but because for the first time, I was engaging with Richard not as a wounded daughter, but as a confident guardian making decisions from a place of strength rather than hurt. Blood means nothing, he had taught me. And in his failure, he had given me the opportunity to discover what truly matters. The family we choose, the promises we keep, the love we cultivate every single day. Autumn in Ohio arrives like a watercolor painting, the edges of summer bleeding into crisp mornings, the trees igniting in amber and crimson before surrendering to winter's approach. Our house transformed too. Windows decorated with paper leaves the children had cut out, the porch adorned with pumpkins they'd selected from a local farm. Life settled into rhythms. I was still learning to navigate, school drop-offs and pickups, soccer practices for Emma, art therapy for Lucas, Sophia's dance classes. Richard remained on the periphery of our lives, a shadow figure tentatively taking shape. After that first meeting at the park, we'd agreed to monthly visits, always supervised, always in public spaces. The children's reactions varied. Sophia, too young to remember his abandonment, was naturally curious and affectionate. Lucas was quietly observant, studying Richard like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Emma maintained her protective distance, polite but wary. You don't have to go if you don't want to, I reminded Emma before our third scheduled meeting. She was brushing her hair in the bathroom, her expression solemn in the mirror. I know, she said, but I want to understand. Understand what, honey? She met my eyes in the reflection. Why someone would leave their kids. I need to know it wasn't because of me. My heart twisted. Emma, listen to me. Your father's choices had nothing to do with you. Nothing. They were about his problems, his weaknesses. Never, ever about you. She nodded, but I could see the doubt lingering. This was the cruel legacy of abandonment. The questions that burrow deep into a child's heart. Was I not enough? Was I too much? Did I do something wrong? The visit that day was at a local museum. Neutral territory, with plenty to do if conversations faltered. Richard arrived early, as always, waiting by the entrance with the patient, slightly hunched posture of a man acutely aware of his tenuous position. 9 months sober now, he looked healthier, his eyes clearer, his movements more deliberate. "Thank you for coming," he said, the same greeting he offered at every visit. Not assuming, not presuming, acknowledging the gift we were giving him. Sophia immediately showed him her new light-up sneakers. Lucas had brought a drawing to share, a detailed dinosaur scene. Emma hung back, observing, until Richard asked about the book tucked under her arm. "It's about black holes," she said. "Olivia got it for me from the library." "May I see?" he asked, genuine interest in his voice. She hesitated, then handed it over. "Be careful with it. It's not mine." "I will," he promised. It was a small moment, insignificant perhaps to an outside observer, but I saw it for what it was. The first voluntary offering Emma had made, the tiniest crack in her carefully constructed wall. As they looked through the book together, Richard pointing out fascinating facts about gravitational pull and event horizons, I felt a strange emotion I couldn't immediately identify. Not jealousy, not resentment, but something adjacent to both. It took me a moment to recognize it. Protectiveness. I was afraid for Emma, afraid she would lower her guard only to be hurt again. Teresa must have sensed my tension. She squeezed my hand gently, a silent reminder that we were watching, we were present, we would catch these children if they fell. The museum visit went smoothly. We explored exhibits on natural history and space science, stopping for lunch in the cafe. Richard maintained appropriate boundaries, never pushing for affection, respecting each child's comfort level. When it was time to leave, Sophia hugged him spontaneously. Lucas offered a high five. Emma simply said, "Bye, Richard," but it was the first time she'd addressed him directly by name instead of avoiding addressing him at all. In the car on the way home, Teresa asked the kids how they felt about the visit. "I liked the museum," Sophia said, predictably focusing on the location rather than the company. "Richard knows a lot about dinosaurs," Lucas offered. "Not as much as me, but still pretty good." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, "He's trying hard." It wasn't affection or forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement, the beginning of something like understanding. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Teresa and I sat on the porch swing, sharing a blanket against the October chill. The neighborhood was quiet, most houses dark, save for porch lights, and occasional glimpses of blue television glow through windows. "What are you thinking?" Teresa asked, her head resting against my shoulder. "I'm thinking about forgiveness," I admitted, "about whether I'm capable of it." She was silent for a moment. "Forgiveness isn't something you owe him, you know. It's not a transaction." "I know. But I wonder if I'm holding on to anger because it's easier than letting go. Easier than accepting that he's changing, that he might actually become someone worth knowing. Or maybe you're just protecting yourself and the kids from being hurt again," she suggested. "That's not wrong, Olivia," I sighed, watching my breath form a small cloud in the cool air. "Sometimes I feel like I'm still that 13-year-old girl, standing in the doorway, watching him drive away. Like part of me is frozen there, waiting for him to come back and explain." Teresa took my hand, her fingers warm against mine. "You know what I see? I see a woman who took that pain and transformed it into something beautiful. You didn't let it define you. You used it to fuel your compassion, your determination to create the family you never had." Her words settled over me like a balm. She was right. I wasn't that abandoned child anymore. I was an adult who had made conscious choices, who had built connections stronger than blood. "What about you?" I asked her. "Do you think you can forgive him?" She considered this. "I'm not there yet. But I'm willing to see where this goes for the kids' sake. They deserve to know their father, as long as he can be trusted not to hurt them again." The next few months brought more changes. Richard secured a steady job as a manager at a home improvement store in Columbus, allowing him to move closer and visit more regularly. He never pushed for more time or access than we offered, always deferential to our boundaries, always grateful for whatever connection we allowed. Christmas approached, our second holiday season as a blended family. Last year had been chaotic, with Teresa and I still learning how to coordinate traditions and expectations. This year, we felt more prepared, more cohesive in our approach. Emma wanted a telescope for Christmas. A real one, not the beginner model she'd outgrown. Lucas asked for art supplies and books about ancient civilizations, his interests expanding beyond dinosaurs. Sophia's list was longer and more fanciful, featuring requests for a real unicorn, alongside more attainable desires for craft kits and dress-up clothes. Richard asked if he could contribute to their Christmas gifts. We agreed, with the understanding that the presents would come from all of us, not separately from him. He seemed relieved by this arrangement, perhaps recognizing that he hadn't yet earned the right to be a primary gift-giver in their lives. The week before Christmas, a snowstorm blanketed Columbus in 8 inches of powdery white. Schools closed for 2 days, giving the children an early start to their holiday break. We built snowmen in the yard, had epic snowball fights, and returned indoors for hot chocolate with the excessive marshmallows that Teresa always allowed, despite my half-hearted objections. On the second snow day, as Teresa was helping the kids build a snow fort, I received a call from my boss at the Family Services Agency. "Olivia, I'm sorry to bother you during the snow day," Diane began, "but we have a situation I thought you might want to know about." "What's going on?" I asked, moving to the kitchen for privacy. "A teen mother just came in with her 6-month-old. She's only 16, kicked out by her parents, nowhere to go. We're trying to find emergency placement, but with the storm, options are limited." My heart sank. This was unfortunately common in our work. Young mothers without support systems, vulnerable and desperate. "What about the usual emergency shelters?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Packed because of the weather," Diane confirmed. "We're making calls, but I thought..." "Well, you have experience with unconventional family arrangements." I understood what she was asking. We had a spare room. Technically, it was serving as a home office, but it could be converted back to a bedroom. But taking in a teenager and infant was an enormous responsibility, one that would impact not just me, but Teresa and the children as well. "Let me talk to Teresa," I said. "I'll call you right back." I found Teresa outside, helping Sophia add a carrot nose to a lopsided snowman. I explained the situation while the children continued playing nearby. "A teenager and a baby?" Teresa repeated, brushing snow from her gloves. "That's a big commitment, Olivia." "I know. It would just be temporary. A few days until the weather clears and more options open up." She studied my face. "You really want to do this, don't you?" I nodded. "I keep thinking about what would have happened to you and the kids if no one had stepped in. If you'd had nowhere to go." Teresa glanced at Emma, Lucas, and Sophia, their cheeks flushed with cold and excitement as they packed snow onto their fort. Then she smiled. "Call Diane back. Tell her we'll take them in." 2 hours later, I was driving carefully through snow-covered streets to pick up Jasmine and her baby Noah. The roads were nearly empty, most people sensibly staying home during the storm. At the agency, Diane met me at the door, relief evident on her face. "You're a lifesaver," she said, leading me to her office where a thin girl with dark, curly hair sat cradling a bundled infant. She looked up when we entered, her eyes wary, exhausted. "Jasmine, this is Olivia," Diane introduced us. "She and her family have offered to let you and Noah stay with them until we can find a more permanent arrangement." Jasmine nodded slightly, not speaking. The baby made soft cooing sounds in her arms, seemingly content despite the circumstances. Do you have any bags? I asked gently. Just this, she replied, nodding toward a worn backpack on the floor. Everything she owned, everything her child owned, in one small bag. The precariousness of their situation hit me anew. The drive home was quiet. Jasmine stared out the window, occasionally murmuring to Noah when he fussed. I didn't push conversation, recognizing her need for space, for processing. At the house, Teresa had prepared the office, clearing out the desk and bringing in a crib we'd stored in the attic after Sophia outgrew it. The children were curious but respectful, having been briefed on our temporary guests. This is Jasmine and baby Noah, I introduced them. They'll be staying with us for a little while. Emma, always the leader, stepped forward. I'm Emma, I'm 11. That's Lucas, he's 8, and Sophia is 6. Do you want to see your room? Jasmine seemed momentarily overwhelmed by the welcome committee, but she nodded, following Emma down the hallway. Teresa moved to help with the baby, but Jasmine clutched him tighter, not ready to let anyone else hold him. It's okay, Teresa assured her. You keep him. I've just got bottles and formula in the kitchen when you need them. Slowly, over dinner, Jasmine began to relax slightly. She ate ravenously, though she insisted on holding Noah throughout the meal, despite Teresa's offers to hold him while she ate. The children peppered her with questions. How old was Noah? Did he like applesauce? Could they read him stories? Which she answered briefly but not unkindly. After the children went to bed, Jasmine opened up a bit more. Her story was sadly familiar. Pregnant at 15, boyfriend disappeared, parents gave her an ultimatum, adoption or eviction. She'd chosen her child, living with a friend until that arrangement fell apart, working part-time at a fast food restaurant, until her manager discovered she was bringing Noah to work and hiding him in the break room. I'm going to get my GED, she told us, determination in her voice despite her circumstances. And then community college. I want to be a nurse. That's a good goal, Teresa encouraged her. I work in healthcare. It's a stable field with good benefits. How will you manage childcare? I asked, not to discourage her, but to understand her plan. Jasmine's confidence faltered. I'm figuring that out. There are some programs, I think. We didn't push further that night, letting her settle in, get some much-needed rest. But over the next few days, as the snow slowly melted and the city returned to normal operations, we began to help Jasmine develop a more concrete plan. I connected her with resources through the Family Services Agency, housing assistance, childcare subsidies, educational programs for teen parents. Teresa helped her apply for WIC and other benefits to ensure Noah's nutritional needs were met. We discovered that Jasmine was bright and motivated, but simply lacked the support system and information needed to navigate the complex web of services available to her. Our few days of emergency housing stretched into a week, then 2. The children adored baby Noah, taking turns entertaining him, reading to him, singing made-up songs that made him smile and coo. Even Emma, usually reserved with strangers, appointed herself Noah's official protector, making sure his toys were age-appropriate, and that the younger children washed their hands before touching him. Jasmine watched our family dynamics with curious eyes. One evening, as Teresa and I moved around the kitchen in our usual choreographed dinner preparation, she asked, "Are you two together?" We exchanged glances, used to this question, but never quite sure how to answer it. Our relationship defied simple categorization. Not romantic partners, not merely roommates or co-parents, but something uniquely our own. We're family, Teresa said simply. We raised the children together. Jasmine nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. That's cool. It's like you chose each other. We did, I confirmed. Family isn't always about blood. Blood means nothing, she said unexpectedly, echoing Richard's words but with a different meaning entirely. My blood family threw me away. Noah's father's blood family pretends he doesn't exist. Blood doesn't mean shit. I couldn't argue with her lived experience. You're right. What matters is who stays, who shows up, who builds a home with you. She looked down at Noah, sleeping peacefully in her arms. I'm going to be that for him. No matter what. Christmas Eve arrived, our house transformed by twinkling lights, homemade decorations, and the perpetual scent of Teresa's cinnamon cookies. We'd invited Richard to join us for Christmas morning, his first holiday with the children, a significant milestone in our evolving relationship. We'd also invited Jasmine and Noah to participate in our celebrations, not wanting them to feel like outsiders during the holiday. To our surprise, Jasmine had embraced the opportunity, even helping the children make ornaments and wrap presents. That evening, after the younger children were in bed, supposedly sleeping but likely too excited about Santa's impending arrival to actually rest, I found Emma and Jasmine in the kitchen. They sat at the table, mugs of hot chocolate between them, engaged in serious conversation. Everything okay? I asked, pausing in the doorway. Emma nodded. Jasmine was just telling me about how she's going to college to become a nurse. It's going to take a while, Jasmine clarified. Maybe 6 years with part-time classes, but I'm going to do it. The determination in her voice reminded me so much of myself at that age, the fierce commitment to build something better than what I'd been given. I have no doubt, I told her, meaning it. After Emma went to bed, Jasmine helped me arrange presents under the tree, her expression wistful. I couldn't get Noah much, she admitted, just a couple little things from the dollar store. He's 6 months old, I reminded her gently. He doesn't know the difference. What matters is that you're with him, loving him. She nodded, but I could see the shame in her eyes. The universal desire of parents to provide abundance for their children, to shield them from the limitations of circumstance. Jasmine, I said carefully, Teresa and I got a few things for Noah. And for you. Nothing extravagant, just some practical items and a couple fun ones. I hope that's okay. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. You didn't have to do that. We wanted to, I assured her. You're spending Christmas with us. That makes you family, at least for now. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed by her emotion. Thank you. For everything. Not just the presents, but for showing me what a real family looks like. Christmas morning was chaotic, joyful, overwhelming. Everything a holiday with children should be. The kids woke at an ungodly hour, racing downstairs to discover that Santa had indeed visited. Sophia squealed over her new art supplies and dress-up costumes. Lucas unwrapped books and a museum-quality dinosaur model with reverent care. Emma gasped when she opened the telescope, immediately reading the specifications on the box. Noah was more interested in the wrapping paper than his new toys, giggling as Sophia helped him tear colorful strips. Jasmine seemed genuinely surprised and touched by her gifts. Warm pajamas, a new backpack, gift cards for baby supplies, and a beautiful journal with her name embossed on the cover. Richard arrived mid-morning, bearing additional gifts that we'd approved beforehand. He entered cautiously, still mindful of his guest status in our home. The children greeted him with varying degrees of enthusiasm, Sophia with a hug, Lucas with excited chatter about his presence, Emma with a small smile, and a "Merry Christmas, Richard." I introduced him to Jasmine, explaining briefly that she and Noah were staying with us temporarily. If Richard was surprised by this addition to our household, he didn't show it, greeting her warmly and complimenting Noah's Christmas outfit. As the day progressed, I found myself observing the tableau before me with a sense of wonder. Here in our living room was a family configuration no one could have predicted. Teresa and I, the children we were raising together, Richard tentatively reconnecting with the family he'd abandoned, a teenage mother and her infant finding temporary refuge. None of us related by blood except in the most fragmented way, yet somehow forming a cohesive whole for this one perfect day. After dinner, as the children played with their new toys and the adults lingered over coffee, my phone rang. It was Diane from the Family Services Agency. "I'm sorry to call on Christmas," she began, "but I wanted to let you know we found a placement for Jasmine and Noah. There's an opening at the Sunflower House. It's a residential program for teen mothers. They'll have their own apartment, childcare while Jasmine attends school, parenting classes, the works." "That's wonderful news," I said, genuinely pleased though also feeling an unexpected pang at the thought of them leaving. When would they start? They can move in the day after tomorrow, Diane said. It's a 2-year program, so they'll have stability for a good while. After hanging up, I found Jasmine to share the news. Her reaction was mixed. Relief at the prospect of stability and support, anxiety about another transition, another new beginning. You'll be amazing, I assured her, and we'll stay in touch. You're not doing this alone anymore. That night, after the house had quieted, I sat alone by the Christmas tree, watching the lights twinkle in the darkness. Richard had gone back to his apartment, the children were asleep, Jasmine and Noah were settled in their temporary room, and Teresa had turned in early, exhausted from the day's festivities. In the stillness, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 10 years ago, I had stood in a different house, watching my father walk away, his cold words echoing, "Blood means nothing." He had meant it as a dismissal, a severance of responsibility. But inadvertently, he had given me a truth that had shaped my life in ways he could never have anticipated. Blood indeed meant nothing compared to choice, compared to commitment, compared to the daily decision to show up and stay. The family I had built wasn't defined by genetics or legal documents, though those had their place. It was defined by love, complicated, challenging, rewarding love that required intention and effort every single day. I thought of Emma, Lucas, and Sophia sleeping upstairs, not my biological children, yet irrevocably mine in every way that mattered. I thought of Teresa, my co-parent, my friend, my partner, in this unconventional life we'd created. I thought of Jasmine and Noah, whose brief presence in our home had expanded our definition of family once again. And yes, I thought of Richard, making his halting attempts at redemption, at connection. Blood had not been enough to keep him present in our lives before. Now, something stronger than blood was drawing him back. The recognition of what he had lost, what he had thrown away, and the hope that it wasn't too late to build something new. Blood means nothing, I whispered to the quiet room, reclaiming the phrase, transforming it from abandonment to affirmation. What we had created here was more powerful than any biological connection. It was family by choice, by commitment, by love, that refused to be defined by conventional boundaries. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Jasmine and Noah would transition to their new home. Richard would continue his careful path toward earning trust. The children would grow and change, requiring different kinds of support, different kinds of love. Teresa and I would navigate it all together, this life we had chosen, this family we had built. But tonight, in the glow of Christmas lights, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had taken the broken pieces of abandoned families and created something whole, something beautiful. Not perfect, not without struggle, but authentic and strong. Blood means nothing, my father had said. And in his own way, he had given me the most valuable lesson of all. That family is what we make it, who we choose, how we love. The greatest gift he ever gave me was the opportunity to prove him right. Winter melted into spring, bringing new beginnings with the thaw. The Sunflower House program had been transformative for Jasmine and Noah. We visited them monthly, watching as Jasmine blossomed in an environment that supported her goals rather than dismissing them. She'd earned her GED in March, was taking preliminary nursing courses at the community college, and had developed a quiet confidence in her parenting. Noah was thriving too, babbling, crawling, discovering the world with the fearless curiosity of a secure child. They became regular fixtures at our Sunday dinners, welcomed into our expanding circle. The children adored Noah, competing for his attention and delighting in his developmental milestones as if he were a communal achievement. Emma had appointed herself his unofficial tutor, reading to him from science books well beyond his comprehension, insisting that early exposure would spark his interest in astronomy. His first word might be quasar. Teresa teased her one evening after a particularly enthusiastic lesson on celestial bodies. Emma looked entirely pleased with this possibility. "Better than dinosaur," she replied, glancing at Lucas, who was attempting to teach Noah to roar like a T-Rex. Our household had settled into its rhythms: school days and work days, homework and chores, movie nights and game tournaments. Richard continued his careful path toward redemption, now seeing the children twice monthly for outings he planned with meticulous care. The Cincinnati Aquarium. The Air and Space Museum. The natural history exhibit with actual dinosaur fossils that had Lucas vibrating with excitement for days afterward. I watched these interactions with cautious optimism. Richard remained sober, reliable, respectful of boundaries. The children were gradually warming to him, though Emma maintained her emotional distance, protective walls still firmly in place. He never pushed, never demanded more than they were willing to give. Perhaps the most profound change was in how he spoke about family. No more blood means nothing rhetoric, only grateful acknowledgement of the connections he was slowly rebuilding. On a warm Saturday in April, as cherry blossoms transformed our street into a corridor of pink snow, I received an unexpected email from the state adoption agency. My heart stuttered as I read the subject line, "Follow up on application status Blake Garza family." Teresa and I had submitted preliminary adoption paperwork months ago, not with any immediate plans but to understand the process, to explore the possibility of making our guardianship arrangement permanent. We'd been told the initial review would take 6 to 8 months given the complexity of our case. A co-guardianship seeking to transition to co-adoption with a living biological father in the picture. Yet here was a response, arriving sooner than anticipated. "Teresa," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can you come here a minute?" She appeared in the doorway of our home office, dish towel still in hand. "What's up?" "We heard from the adoption agency." I gestured to the screen, unable to open the email myself, suddenly terrified of its contents. She moved behind me, placing her hands on my shoulders. "Together?" I nodded, clicking to open the message. The email was brief, bureaucratic, but the essential information shone through the formal language. Our application had passed the initial screening. We were eligible to proceed with the home study and further evaluation. The door to adoption wasn't fully open, but it was no longer closed either. "Oh my God," Teresa whispered, her fingers tightening on my shoulders. "I didn't expect." "Me neither," I admitted. "Not this soon." We stared at the screen, absorbing the implications. This was just the first step in a long process, but it represented something profound. The possibility of making legally permanent what we already knew in our hearts. That Emma, Lucas, and Sophia were our children. That we were their mothers, in every way that mattered. "Should we tell the kids?" Teresa asked. I hesitated. "Not yet. Let's wait until we're further along. I don't want to get their hopes up if there are complications." And complications there would surely be. The agency had noted that as the biological father had re-established contact and was demonstrating commitment to maintaining a relationship with the children, his consent would likely be required for the adoption to proceed. In essence, Richard would need to legally terminate his parental rights, a significant ask, especially given his recent efforts to reconnect. "We need to talk to Richard," I said, stating the obvious. Teresa nodded, her expression troubled. "Do you think he'll fight it?" "I don't know," I admitted. A year ago, I would have said no. He'd abandoned them completely. But now? He's investing in relationships with them. He's showing up consistently. I honestly don't know. We decided to wait until after the children's spring break to approach Richard. This was a conversation that needed careful planning, strategic timing, and most importantly, face-to-face discussion without the children present. Spring break arrived the following week, bringing with it the challenge of entertaining 3 energetic kids with different interests and energy levels. We'd planned a mix of activities: a day trip to Cedar Point Amusement Park, a visit to the Columbus Zoo, a backyard camping adventure complete with s'mores and stargazing through Emma's telescope. On Wednesday, Richard had arranged to take the children to the Cincinnati Children's Museum, a full-day excursion that would give Teresa and me rare time alone together. As they piled into his car, backpacks filled with snacks and water bottles, I felt the familiar twist of anxiety that still accompanied their departures with him, despite his consistent reliability over the past months. "They'll be fine," Teresa assured me, reading my expression with the ease of long familiarity. "He's proven himself trustworthy." "I know," I said, waving as they drove away. Old habits die hard. We spent the day tackling household projects that were nearly impossible with children underfoot, cleaning out the garage, sorting through outgrown clothes for donation, repairing the wobbly kitchen table that had been annoying us for months. Simple, satisfying tasks that allowed us to work side by side in comfortable companionship. By late afternoon, we'd accomplished more than expected and rewarded ourselves with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. A luxury rarely indulged, as the children universally rejected anything more exotic than mild stir-fry. "We should talk about the adoption," Teresa said as we settled on the porch swing with our food. "How to approach Richard?" I nodded, pushing the swing gently with my foot. "I've been thinking about that. I think honesty is the best policy. Lay out exactly what we're hoping for and why." "And what exactly are we hoping for?" she asked, twirling noodles around her fork. "Full adoption with him terminating rights completely? Or something more open that still gives him legal connection?" It was a question I had been wrestling with myself. On one hand, clean legal breaks provided clarity and security. On the other, Richard had worked hard to rebuild relationships with the children. Did we have the right to sever that legally, even if we promised to maintain the connection informally? "I think we need to propose full adoption," I said finally, "but with a formal visitation agreement that we all sign. That gives the kids the security of legal permanence with us while acknowledging his place in their lives." Teresa considered this. "What if he says no? What if he wants to maintain his parental rights?" "Then we'll have to decide if we want to fight it," I replied. "Or if we continue as we are co-guardians rather than adoptive parents." "Would that be so terrible?" she asked softly. "We're already their legal guardians. The kids are secure, happy. Sometimes I wonder if we're pursuing adoption more for our peace of mind than for theirs." Her question gave me pause. Was this about the children's needs or our desire for validation, for legal recognition of the family we'd built? "Maybe it's both," I admitted. "I want them to know they're ours, permanently, that no one can ever take them away. But you're right, they're already secure. They know we're not going anywhere." We fell silent, contemplating the complexity of what we were undertaking. The swing creaked softly as we rocked, the evening air fragrant with lilacs from the neighbor's yard. "Whatever happens," Teresa said finally, "we're in this together. That's what matters most." I leaned against her shoulder, drawing strength from her steady presence. Together. Richard returned the children just after 8 p.m., all three babbling excitedly about interactive exhibits. The planetarium show that had Emma starry-eyed, the dinosaur bones Lucas had been allowed to touch, the butterfly garden where a monarch had landed on Sophia's finger. "They were amazing," Richard told us on the porch, voice low as the kids raced inside to get ready for bed. "Sophia made friends with every child in the butterfly garden. Lucas corrected the tour guide about pteranodon wingspans. And Emma," he smiled, "Emma asked if I'd take her to the Air and Space Museum in D.C. someday. That's the first time she's ever mentioned wanting to do something with me in the future." The pride and hope in his voice were unmistakable. I exchanged glances with Teresa, our conversation from earlier echoing between us. This was a father reconnecting with his children, investing in their interests, building toward a future. Could we, should we, ask him to legally surrender that connection? "Richard," I said carefully, "we'd like to talk to you about something important. Not tonight, but soon. Could you come over for coffee this weekend? Just the adults?" His expression grew cautious, wary. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Teresa assured him. "We just need to discuss some long-term plans." He nodded slowly. "Saturday morning? The kids have soccer practice, right?" "Perfect," I confirmed. "Thank you for today." They had a wonderful time. After he left, Teresa and I went through the bedtime routine, supervising teeth brushing, listening to excited recaps of the day's adventures, reading stories, tucking in covers, kissing foreheads. By the time we closed Sophia's door, the last stop on our nightly rounds, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. "I'm dreading Saturday," I admitted as we headed downstairs to lock up for the night. "Me too," Teresa agreed. "But we need to have the conversation, whatever the outcome." Saturday arrived with perfect spring weather, sunshine, light breeze, temperature in the mid-60s. The kind of day that should invite optimism. Lucas and Emma had soccer practice, with different teams on different fields, requiring logistical coordination worthy of a military operation. Sophia had a playdate with her friend Zoe, whose mother had graciously offered to take her for the morning so Teresa and I could attend both soccer practices. We dropped the children off at their respective locations, then returned home to prepare for Richard's arrival. Teresa stress-baked cinnamon rolls, while I cleaned already clean countertops and arranged and rearranged the mugs on the coffee table. "We're acting like teenagers waiting for our prom dates," Teresa observed, flour dusting her cheek. "It's going to be fine. One way or another." Richard arrived precisely at 10, punctual as always. He looked nervous, tugging at the cuffs of his shirt as he followed us into the living room. We exchanged pleasantries, commented on the weather, served coffee and fresh cinnamon rolls. All of us delaying the conversation we knew was coming. Finally, I took a deep breath and plunged in. "Richard, we wanted to talk to you about adoption." His coffee mug paused halfway to his lips. "Adoption?" "Teresa and I have submitted preliminary paperwork to adopt Emma, Lucas, and Sophia," I explained. "We've been approved for the next stage of evaluation, but before proceeding further, we wanted to discuss it with you." He set his mug down carefully, his expression unreadable. "I see. We believe it would provide the children with additional security and stability," Teresa added. "Legal permanence." Richard was silent for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, measured. "You're asking me to terminate my parental rights?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, legally, that would be required for the adoption to proceed. But," I hastened to add, "we would want to establish a formal visitation agreement. Your relationship with the children would continue. We value the connection you've rebuilt with them." He laughed without humor. "A visitation agreement, like a divorced parent. It's the best legal protection we can offer while still maintaining your role in their lives," Teresa explained. "We're not trying to cut you out, Richard. We're trying to create clarity and security for everyone involved. By asking me to legally stop being their father." His tone hardened slightly. "After I've spent the past year proving that I can be in their lives consistently. That I've changed." I leaned forward, meeting his eyes directly. "You have changed. We see that. But the reality is, you left them for 2 years. You said, 'Blood means nothing,' and walked away." Teresa raised them alone until I came into the picture. "We've been their consistent caregivers, their family unit, for over 2 years now. And I've been back in their lives for a year," he countered. "Showing up for every visit, every call, building relationships with them." "Which we've supported," Teresa reminded him. "We've facilitated those relationships at every turn." Richard stood abruptly, pacing to the window and back. "I need to think about this. It's a lot to process." "Of course," I said. "We don't expect an answer today. Take whatever time you need." He nodded, then asked unexpectedly, "Have you told the kids about this?" "No," Teresa replied. "We wanted to talk to you first. We won't discuss it with them until we know whether it's a real possibility." Relief flickered across his features. "Thank you for that, at least." After Richard left, Teresa and I sat in silence, the remains of our coffee growing cold in the mugs. "That went about as well as could be expected," I finally said. Teresa nodded. "He didn't say no outright. That's something." "But he didn't say yes either," I pointed out. "And without his consent, the adoption won't proceed." "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," she said pragmatically. "For now, we need to pick up the kids and get through the weekend." The next few weeks passed in a strange limbo. Richard maintained his regular visitation schedule with the children, gave no indication to them that anything had changed, but communication between us adults became stilted, formal. The easy camaraderie we'd developed over the past year had evaporated, replaced by careful politeness that felt like walking on glass. In early May, I received a text from Richard. "Can we meet again? Just you and me this time." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my office during my lunch break. Richard was already there when I arrived, a leather portfolio on the table in front of him, looking more formal than I'd seen him in years. "Thank you for coming," he began after I'd settled across from him with my latte. "Of course," I replied, trying to read his expression. "How are you?" "Honestly, struggling." He opened the portfolio, revealing a stack of legal documents. "I've been consulting with an attorney about your adoption request." My stomach tightened. This felt like preparation for a fight. "I understand," I said carefully. "It's a significant legal decision." He nodded. The attorney laid out my options. I could contest the adoption entirely, maintain my parental rights. I could consent, but negotiate for legally binding visitation rights. Or I could consent unconditionally and rely on your goodwill for continued access to the children. I waited, not wanting to interrupt his thoughts. "For weeks I've been angry," he continued, "feeling like, after all my efforts to be present in their lives again, you and Teresa were trying to push me out completely. It felt like punishment for past mistakes I can't undo." "That wasn't our intent," I began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish, please. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what it means to be a parent, about what Emma, Lucas, and Sophia need most." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "The truth is, you and Teresa are their parents. You've been there consistently. You've created a stable, loving home. You've put their needs above your own at every turn." My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "I want to be in their lives," Richard continued. "I want to continue building relationships with them. But I don't need legal rights to do that. What I need is to put their well-being first, and I believe your adoption proposal does that." He slid a document across the table. "This is my consent to the adoption, already notarized. No conditions, no legal demands for visitation. Just a father recognizing what's best for his children." I stared at the paper, momentarily speechless. "Richard, we never wanted to cut you out of their lives. The visitation agreement offer was genuine." Quote, "I know," he said, "and I appreciate that, but I realized something important during these weeks of soul-searching. If I truly want to prove that I've changed, that I can put my children first, then I need to support what's best for them without demanding legal guarantees for myself. I'm choosing to trust you and Teresa to continue including me in their lives because it's good for them, not because a court orders it." Tears pricked at my eyes. "Thank you. This means more than I can express." "There's one more thing," he said, reaching back into the portfolio. "I've been working on something else these past weeks. A letter for each of the kids, to be opened when they're 18, explaining my choices, my failures, my hopes for them. I'd like to know if you think that's appropriate." He handed me 3 sealed envelopes, each with a child's name written on the front. "Of course it's appropriate," I assured him. "We'll keep them safe until the time comes." Richard's shoulders relaxed, tension visibly leaving his body. "Thank you." As we prepared to leave, he asked one final question. "When will you tell the kids about the adoption plans?" "Soon," I said. "We'll need to prepare them for the home study process, the interviews. And we want them to have a voice in this decision too." He nodded. "When you do tell them, please make sure they know I'm not abandoning them again. That I'm still going to be in their lives, just in a different legal capacity." "We will," I promised. "They'll understand that this change is about adding security, not taking anything away." That evening, Teresa and I sat on the porch swing, Richard's consent form between us like a fragile, precious artifact. "I can't believe he agreed," Teresa whispered, "without conditions." "He's changed," I said, still processing the conversation. "More than I realized. He's finally putting them first." She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "Does this make you think differently about him? About forgiving him for walking away from you and Liam?" I considered the question carefully. "Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. I'm further along that path than I was before, but there's still distance to travel. What matters most is that he's giving Emma, Lucas, and Sophia what they need now, even at personal cost." The next step was telling the children. We decided on a weekend family meeting, creating a comfortable setting with favorite snacks and a relaxed atmosphere. Richard offered to be present if we thought it would help. But we all agreed this conversation should be just our immediate household first, with Richard's continued role addressed clearly. Saturday morning found us gathered in the living room, the children puzzled by the formal setup but excited by the promise of important family news. "We wanted to talk to you about something special," Teresa began. "Something that would make our family even more official than it already is." "Are we getting a dog?" Lucas asked hopefully, his perpetual request. "No, buddy, not a dog," I laughed. "We're talking about adoption." Emma straightened, suddenly alert. "Adoption? Like when someone becomes your legal parent forever?" "Exactly," I confirmed. "Teresa and I would like to adopt all three of you legally. That would make us your permanent parents in the eyes of the law, not just your guardians." Sophia's brow furrowed in confusion. "But you're already our moms." "We are in all the ways that matter," Teresa explained gently. "But this would make it official on paper. No one could ever question it or try to change it." Lucas looked thoughtful. "What about Richard? Would he still be our dad?" This was the delicate part. Richard would still be in your lives, I assured them. You'd still have your regular visits and activities with him, but legally Teresa and I would be your only parents. "And Richard is okay with this?" Emma asked, always perceptive about adult dynamics. "Yes," I told her honestly. "He agrees that this is what's best for all of you. He wants you to have the security of a permanent legal family with us, while still maintaining his relationship with you." The children processed this information in their own ways. Sophia, too young to fully grasp the legal implications, was satisfied knowing nothing would change in her daily life. Lucas had practical questions about names, about whether he could still talk about Richard as his dad. Yes, about whether this meant more or less Christmas presents. We laughed and assured him the gift situation would remain unchanged. Emma, as always, took longer to process. She was quiet during the discussion, listening intently but offering little. Later that evening, she found me in the kitchen and asked to speak privately. "Is this really what Richard wants?" she asked directly. "Or did you convince him?" I motioned for her to sit at the kitchen island, giving her question the serious consideration it deserved. "Richard made this decision himself after thinking about it carefully. He told me that he wants what's best for you, Lucas and Sophia, and he believes having Teresa and me as your legal parents provides the most security." She nodded slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about what he said to us, about blood meaning nothing." "What about it?" I asked cautiously. "I think I understand now what he should have meant," she said. "Not that family doesn't matter, but that family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who chooses you, who stays, who builds a home with you." She looked up, her eyes serious beyond her years. "Like you did with us." I swallowed hard, recognizing my own words reflected back to me. "That's exactly right, Emma. I want the adoption," she said decisively. "I want you and Teresa to be my forever moms, legally, and everything. But I also want Richard to keep trying. I think I might be ready to call him Dad someday. Not yet, but maybe." I pulled her into a hug, this remarkable child, who had survived abandonment and emerged with wisdom and compassion beyond her years. "There's no rush, sweetheart. No timeline. Your heart will know when it's ready." The adoption process unfolded over the following months. Home studies, interviews, paperwork, court dates. Richard remained true to his word, maintaining his regular visitation while supporting our petition without reservation. When questioned by the court about his willingness to terminate his parental rights, he spoke eloquently about putting the children's needs above his own desires, about recognizing the stable family unit Teresa and I had created. Jasmine and Noah became our cheerleaders, celebrating each milestone in the process. Now thriving in her second year at Sunflower House, Jasmine had begun nursing prerequisites at the community college, while Noah attended the on-site daycare. They joined us for Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, backyard barbecues, extended family in every way that mattered. On a crisp October morning, almost 3 years to the day since I'd first received that court notice about Richard's second abandoned family, we gathered at the county courthouse. Emma wore a blue dress she'd selected specifically for the occasion. Lucas had insisted on a bow tie. Sophia's hair was adorned with flowers Teresa had carefully woven into her braids. Richard sat in the row behind us, supporting our family while respecting the boundaries of the moment. My mother had flown in from Chicago, finally embracing the unconventional family I'd built. Liam sat beside her, now a journeyman electrician with his own apartment and a serious girlfriend. Jasmine held Noah on her lap, the toddler surprisingly well behaved in the formal setting. When the judge called our names, we approached the bench together, Teresa, me, and the 3 children who had transformed our lives in ways we could never have imagined. "The court has reviewed your petition thoroughly," the judge began, her expression warm. "I've rarely seen a case with such compelling evidence of a stable, nurturing home environment. It's clear that these children are deeply loved and well cared for." She addressed Emma, Lucas, and Sophia directly. "I understand you've all expressed your desire for this adoption to proceed. Is that still your wish?" They nodded solemnly, even Sophia understanding the importance of the moment. "Very well," the judge continued. "By the power vested in me by the state of Ohio, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. From this day forward, Emma, Lucas, and Sophia are the legal children of Teresa Garza and Olivia Blake, with all the rights and privileges thereof." She smiled, breaking the formal demeanor. "Congratulations to all of you. Your family is officially recognized by law, though it's abundantly clear it has existed in truth for quite some time." Outside the courthouse, we gathered on the broad steps for photos, our newly legal family surrounded by the extended circle of love we'd created. Richard stood slightly apart until Emma surprised everyone by taking his hand and pulling him into the group. "You're still part of our family," she told him, loud enough for all to hear. "Just in a different way." His eyes glistened with tears as he allowed himself to be positioned beside her, one hand hesitantly resting on her shoulder. The gesture was small but profound, acknowledgement of the past, acceptance of the present, hope for the future. That evening, after a celebration dinner at our favorite restaurant, after the children had gone to bed exhausted but happy, Teresa and I sat on our porch swing, a tradition that had witnessed so many important conversations over the years. "We did it," she said softly, lacing her fingers through mine. "They're officially ours." "They always were," I replied, "but yes. Now the world recognizes what we've known all along." We rocked gently in the autumn evening, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. The same stars Emma studied through her telescope, the same stars that had witnessed the unfolding of our unlikely family story. "Blood means nothing," my father had said on that painful night so long ago, intending to sever ties, to justify abandonment. He couldn't have known that his cruel words would become a mantra of liberation, a truth that would lead me to create connections stronger than genetics, a family bound by choice rather than obligation. "Blood means nothing," I whispered into the night. "Love means everything." And in that moment, surrounded by the home we'd built, the family we'd chosen, I finally understood the gift hidden within my father's abandonment. The freedom to define family on my own terms, to create bonds that transcended biology, to prove through living that the strongest connections are those we choose to nurture every single day. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.